All right. Welcome back, everyone. We're diving into some pretty interesting stuff today. This whole, this recent election, right?
That was a nail biter for sure.
It was a total nail biter.
Yeah.
And a lot of folks are tossing around this word mandate.
Yeah.
Like, oh, Trump's got a mandate now,
Yeah.
Does he? We're going to try to figure that out today.
Right.
So we're looking at this article. Trump has lost his popular vote majority. And, it kind of paints a different picture,
It does. It does. I think the big thing to keep in mind here is that, Trump got a second term. That's the headline.
Right.
But how he got there is really important. And the margin of victory, that's what we really need to look at. It was close.
It was super close. I mean, closer than we've seen in a while, right?
Even closer than when Hillary Clinton lost to Trump back in 2016.
Back in 16, yeah.
Which was already, considered a close election.
That was a nail biter, too.
It was. But we're talking 1.55% over Harris.
Over Harris.
That's it. Tiny, and even tighter than Clinton's margin over Trump.
Wow.
Yeah, and the other thing that's important to remember here is that Trump, for the third time in a row, did not win the popular vote.
Right.
Right now, he's sitting at 49.83%, and that could potentially go down a little bit as all the votes are finally tallied.
Right.
And historically, when you look at presidents who have had lasting impact, who've been able to get really big things done, and you think of like Obama or George W. Bush, these guys had significantly more of the popular vote.
Like a much bigger chunk of the country was like, yeah, we're with you on this.
Exactly. And so it's really interesting to see Trump going into another 4 years with nearly half the country, having voted for someone else.
Right. So how do you govern when it's that close? You know what I mean? What does that even look like?
Yeah. And everybody's talking about this mandate.
Right, and the mandate.
It's like, well, does he really have a mandate?
It's shaky, right? It doesn't feel like it.
It doesn't, especially when you consider that, yes, okay, the Republicans, they control the House and the Senate.
Right.
But the House majority, it's really slim.
It is really thin, yeah.
It is. And this is where things get really interesting because you've got 3 House representatives moving into cabinet positions.
Okay.
Which means those seats have to be filled.
Right. Special elections.
Special elections, yeah. And until that happens, the Republican majority in the House, it's even smaller.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So, the potential for gridlock, for, really difficult negotiations on major policies, it's huge.
So explain this to me like I'm 5, right?
Mm-hmm.
Explain to me how that actually works. Like how do those missing seats actually change things?
Okay. So imagine this, right? Trump wants to push through some legislation, some big changes, let's say, to healthcare or, tax policy, something major.
Big stuff.
Big stuff. And normally, he'd rely on the Republican majority to get that through.
Right. The votes.
But now with the smaller majority, even a handful of Republicans who decide, you know what? I'm not on board with this, they can actually sink the whole thing.
Oh, wow.
So these moderate Republicans, the ones who, might normally just vote along party lines, suddenly they have way more power.
Interesting.
They can negotiate. They can even block the whole thing. It's going to be interesting to see how that plays out.
Wow. So it's all about the numbers.
Yeah.
It's all about the numbers game in the House.
It is. It absolutely is.
Fewer votes equals more power for individual representatives. That's fascinating. And then on top of all of that, we have Trump's governing style, which, the article kind of calls it a little unconventional, let's say.
Yeah. I mean, he's made it pretty clear that he sees Washington as kind of an enemy city,
Yeah.
And his cabinet appointments, they seem to reflect that. He's putting people in charge of agencies who seem to be ideologically opposed to the very work that those agencies do.
So it's like he's stacking the deck almost with folks who might actually try to dismantle things or change things in a pretty drastic way.
Yeah, it's a bold strategy for sure.
It's bold. That's one word for it. And then you have some folks making some pretty intense historical comparisons.
Yeah. There's this columnist, Frank Miele, writes for Real Clear Politics, who's arguing that Trump is taking a page out of, get this, Abraham Lincoln's playbook.
Lincoln.
He's saying that that Trump, like Lincoln, believes in unifying the country through, strength and decisive leadership.
Wait, hold on. Isn't that a bit of a stretch, though? I mean, we're
Yeah.
talking about a guy who barely won an election that was, super contentious. Lincoln was dealing with a nation that was, like, literally tearing itself apart.
Exactly. That's the thing. You can't just, draw these simplistic comparisons to these massive figures in history.
Right.
It's important to consider the context, the specific challenges they faced. I mean, Lincoln had a secession on his hands, widespread violence, a nation literally at war with itself.
Yeah. I don't think we're quite there yet.
No, I don't think so either.
So it seems like the takeaway here is that, yeah, okay, we hear all this talk about a mandate.
Right.
But the reality is way more complicated.
Yeah.
The election was close.
Mm-hmm.
The country's, like, totally divided.
Deeply divided.
Deeply divided. And Trump's approach to governing is, well, it's unique. It's interesting.
It is. It's going to be really interesting to see how this all unfolds.
Yeah, and that brings up some pretty big questions, right?
It does.
Like, can Trump actually bring the country together with, so little support behind him?
Yeah.
How is his governing style? How are these cabinet appointments? How is all that going to affect, his ability to get anything done?
Right.
Big questions. Big questions. And I think these are questions that are worth thinking about, as you guys dig into this article yourself.
Absolutely.
Because it really feels like we're in uncharted territory here. And understanding all these little details, it's going to be more important than ever. So, yeah, keep thinking, keep digging, and we'll see you next time.